Alright, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Kugler here, and we'll be going over another developer session. I think when we left off last time, we just kind of re-implemented a patrol behavior AI that ends up with, that switches to a chasing behavior once the player's spotted. So for the next step in the couple changes I have in mind, rather than using a traditional, transitional, arena-based battle system, we're going to have combat take place in the overworld. And, we're going to do a few other, little visual effect type things from there to kind of mix things up. So, I think when I did my refactoring, the way I set this up is if I don't have this battle transition manager attached to my script, it should just, work out the gate. But there's going to be some other stuff we need to do. But for now, let's just remove that component, play, and see what happens to the game. And once again, every time I always forget how slow it is to, run the game the first time. So let's come meet our enemy here. Our fearsome opponent. And that did not quite work correctly. So what happened? Let's take a look at the scene. The enemy unit did not transition to combat. Though he is over here, presumably this is 0-0. Or is that a second unit? I thought we switched our spawn point to only have one enemy, which is true. It's only set to one enemy. So without the arena setup, our enemy unit... Well, so that begs the question. If I'm not going to be using a representational battle arena, am I still actually using a representational battle unit? Like, does each unit I run into on the overworld split into multiple enemies, or is it just that one enemy? And furthermore, the enemy moved over to 0-0 because when I spawned the enemy unit, that's where he was placed. Yeah, so let's take a look at that again. So I don't believe this, I think if we look at it, we're going to see that the enemy unit, yeah, it's just right here. It's not associated with the arena whatsoever, which is correct. However, that's not exactly what we want. So, let's take a look at our battle system. So, Battle Manager is the current guide. We're no longer using Stationary Battle Manager. So, it's just normal Battle Manager. He exposes all of our events. We have our player position, and we have our start battle. Very similar to what we had before. Save spawn enemies, which is going to do what? It's going to create the enemy and add him to the collection. And creating the enemy doesn't do anything with the position, which is why he's coming out at 0-0. Now, our battle transition manager was responsible for placing the enemies in the scene. It hooked onto this battle arena started, and in addition to swapping out the existing terrain with the arena, he also set the positions of the enemies. So, So let's, following that exact same train of thought, Battle Transition Manager, let's do a, what do we want to call this? So we're going to add a component that's going to hook up to these same events, or at the very least the battle start, And since it knows about the confrontation info, or rather it knows about the battle system that knows about the confrontation info, it also knows about the enemy units and its enemies that have been spawned. So I think we can use the enemy unit position. Well, no, so we know the player position, and we know the player forward, and we know the enemy unit position, and we know the number of enemies that have been spawned from there. So we can really do we can do a combination of raycasts to place enemies in a set pattern in front of the player. So we can have a set of cardinal positions. I think we'll probably have no more than 3 or 4 enemies in a single battle. And we will be able to determine, based on certain placements, if the enemy is still within a line of sight of the player. And if it's not, we can move that around and just keep going until the enemy has been placed in the combat area, has a line of sight, and does not collide with a different enemy. So the enemies aren't too close to one another. Yeah, I think that sounds right. So let's go ahead and add a new component. And we will call this Overworld Enemy Placement. And do I have a base class for this stuff? I do not. Only that it requires the iBattle system component to prevent it from being placed on, anywhere that I don't want it to be. Require component type of iBattle system. Add our using Unity engine. Public class mono behavior. And we are going to now that I have a second one, as you probably observed from previous parts, as soon as I have 2 classes serving a similar behavior, I like to take that and figure out what kind of base class I want to create from it. So just offhand, I'm looking at this and it's like, all right, well, I can hook up to, a variety, or rather all of these, battle events, and unhook on destroy and keep those as virtual, as well as having a virtual start and a virtual on destroy, and then have a set the event handlers to virtual methods as well, or rather set them to abstract methods that need to be overridden. But for now, we'll go ahead and just proceed. Void start. I'm trying to think, do I care about battle ended in this case? No, I think I don't. So battle system and battle started. And I don't think I actually care about. I do want a on destroy, so I can unhook from the event. And started. And what we're going to want to do, so by this point, by the battle started, we should already be, that's the very end of the method. So we already have confrontation info, and we're already past the spawn enemies. So our enemies collection in the battle system is filled with the enemies that are actually in the fight. So I want to say we weren't ever actually disabling the enemy unit, because us going to the battle arena and thereby leaving the collider that spawned the enemy caused everything to be disabled. And that was a bit of an oversight on my part, because at the same time, if I had new enemies spawning in and the player was not within the collider, they were coming out enabled and taking up CPU cycles. But for this case, I don't want the enemies disabled, but the end vision is going to be that only the enemies within combat are active, the other enemies are frozen in place, and they are kind of behind this other visual effect of desaturating the scene, so only the battle participants are in color. And maybe lighting and some other stuff. You know, we'll see stylistically what I end up with once I actually put a detailed level together. But for the moment, let's go ahead and say that what am I going to say? So my enemies, my test enemy combatant has what? He's got a sphere collider on him. And I don't have any collision on the models themselves. I don't remember what the point of this battle detection is. Like, I removed that from my enemy units earlier, but I believe I don't actually need that in combat either. But I can make a note of that. So we know where the enemy unit is. I guess I'm not exposing that information. Is that part of the confrontation info? Sure is. So that's the case, I should probably remove that and switch it up. In addition, I also provided the ability for us to not use representational units, but actually just be fighting a single enemy. So that'll probably be the next step, because I want to create code that supports a variety of combat types, because this is also going to be the infrastructure from which I'm going to make other projects in the future. But one thing at a time, you know, don't need to get ahead of ourselves. .confrontationinfo.enemy unit. So if that guy is not equal to null, then we know our starting position is the enemy unit's transform position. We also need to set him to be inactive as part of this. Game object set active false. And I want to say my escape controller has a event that it fires. Player escape complete. And what do I do with that? End battle. Yeah. Alright, so our enemy unit's going to be disabled. Int I is equal to 0, I is less than. Loop over all of our guys. If I is equal to 0, then list out battle system of enemies. Oh, really? Don't care about that. high innumerable of enemies. Was there a reason I did it like that? Because I don't want to allow adding to it from outside of the battle manager. That was why I did it like that. But I also know it's a list. Got two lists. Two list on an already existing list should just return a cast variable. But yeah, and I don't get any count or I got a count method. And I can do it first. So that's fine. Element add is a I can do an element at, so that works. Let's just do that. That's right, this is enemy battle info, isn't it? So we know our first position is always going to be where the enemy unit was. Like, that's an easy choice. If we have one enemy, they appear where the unit was. If we have more than one enemy, we need to figure out where the other enemies are in relation to that actual enemy. So, let's see here. So, we're setting the unit to inactive, getting the first element. And I guess this is all redundant if there's no enemies in the collection for some reason. And yes, I love using this keyword. It's just a stylistic choice of mine. Yeah, it doesn't actually add anything per se. So, we're going to start at 1. First off, we're going to go ahead and cache the count. It should be caching internally as well, but, you know, so if enemy count's greater than 0, we're going to do stuff. If the enemy count is greater than 1, then we need to figure out what the deal is. So from here, we know our first enemy's position. So we need to start. So we can go a couple directions with this. And I'm just thinking, like, depending on position, right? So let's look at this here. Let's say the enemy is right here, like it's right up against the wall. We need to do a raycast to the left and to the right and determine. So, operating under a blanket assumption that the root level of our enemy always has a collider on it of some sort, we can use that to determine the size of the enemy and therefore determine the amount of space between the last placed enemy and the next placed enemy, which, you know, how far do we need to separate them? So if we have an enemy right here against the wall, we're going to do a raycast left. We're going to its right. We're going to do a raycast to it. Well, so not necessarily to its right or to its left. We're going to check the angle that is perpendicular to the player's position and the enemy's position, right? So if our enemy's here and we are where the camera is, we want to look along this axis, right? So if the enemy count is greater than 1, we need to know vector 3. back. And we're just going to assume a horizontal row of enemies for now. Now, I'll probably come back at some point and we'll be doing more advanced placement with a back row or something like that. It's in the plans. So vector is equal to this dot battle system dot enemy unit transform dot position minus player dot instance dot transform dot position vec dot normalize and vec dot right. Can I not get just the right angle from that? Thought this, oh, I guess right was a static thing. 3 dot. Oh, was it the cross product? I always get cross and dot mixed up. Is cross the perpendicular one, or is it dot? Google. Tell me. Tell me things. Tell me about it, Google. So, no, that's given 2 vectors. Find the third. So ultimately, though, well, no. So if we're getting into a battle, whether it's, yeah, if we're getting into a battle, the player needs to turn to face the enemy. Therefore, our right angle is our player's right, you know? Yeah. Oh, transform had right. That's why I'm getting mixed up. Come on now. So I thought it was the vector has a right. You know, you take this current vector and you give it the right angle, but it's talking about the yeah. All right, sorry, I got a little mixed up. I could have sworn there was a right on that, but it was transform. So at this point, are we already facing the enemy? I mean, we should be. Battle manager. Battle start. That's part of the enemy placement we were doing before, wasn't it? Yeah, the arena placement was dealing with changing the players forward. Place player. And there was some shenanigans I had to do with that, wasn't there? Battle arena. There we are. Place player, yeah. So transform position is set to the placement. Camera main transform forward. And we are also then setting the forward on the player movement controller. I think this is the only one I actually need, though. I don't think I need this other thing. Well, vector 3 dot forward, we're just setting it to 0, 0, 1. But yeah, okay. So let's do oh god, where'd you go? There we are. So overworld enemy placement. Name is no longer fitting because now we're not just placing enemies. So this is yeah. I'm gonna have to change the name of the other one. Call it what it is. It's arena-based combat, something or another. manager is such an overused word. But let's take that. So we have our vector. We know that that's going to be our player's new forward, regardless of enemy count. Right? We need to switch the player's forward direction. If the enemy count is greater than 1, then for each enemy, we need to I guess in this case then I no longer need the well, no, because I don't want to for each enemy. So we're going to do that. No. No, I'm not going to do that. Oh. Don't I have a direction enumeration of some sort? Left, right, up, down, yeah. And that's mine? My vector 3 helper? Yes. Alright, so direction. I should add a forward and backwards to that as well. So direction is going to equal, we need to do a physics.raycast. So if physics raycast en.enemy transform position to en.enemy.transform right, max distance. I don't know, 5. We'll start with 5. That's we'll determine what the number should be later, but just to get us off the ground here. Layer mask. Anything, really. Ignore triggers. What's it called? Get handler info. Is this a class or a struct? It's a class, so it can be null. So this will return true if it hits something. So really we want to know Actually, do I even care about the hit info? The overloads on this one always get me. So, position, direction, hit info, the distance, layer mask, query trigger interaction. Why is this yelling at me? Cannot convert from out hit handler info to out unity raycast hit. Oh, because it's not a hit handler info. IntelliSense lied to me, and it is a struct. Yes? Yes. I knew that. I knew that. Calm down, everyone. Just calm down. It's okay. So, I don't actually care about the hit info, but the override I want uses it, so whatever. So if we don't hit anything to the right of the enemy, now here's the trick, to the right of the enemy. So it's going to be right. Else if all that same crap is ever left, it does not. So we'll do a negative right. So we'll go about that. Let's so depending on the direction, we are going to do en.enemy.transform.position is equal to last position plus a vector based on our direction. So let's see what happens with that. Yeah. So our battle system, we are going to add our overworld enemy placement. This guy builds and is all happy. So let's go ahead and see how badly this blows up. Does this guy only have one enemy? I mean, so that's fine, right? So it places the first enemy and it skipped over the rest of that block. Though, I wouldn't say no to a bit of a greater distance. I mean, also none of my actions are occurring. Why can't I attack? Battle player. Player can attack. Focused enemy is null. So is focused enemy null? Pause that. I mean, focused enemy selection is still taking place, allegedly. I mean, I didn't accidentally get rid of this, did I? Alright, well, in any case, though, let's go ahead and check out our spawn here. So in spawning, let's go ahead, our enemies per unit, let's go ahead and up it to 2. Oh yeah, something about this doesn't like me, but let's up our spawn to 3. Oh yeah. So there's the point where we're going to need to start doing a physics raycast to determine if we can continue going in that direction, and if not, we need to go into the back row. Which also then means I need to add an up and down to the focused enemy controller. So we're at 40 minutes, so I think that's where we'll leave off for now, and we'll come back with our next session and continue right off with fixing those bugs and continuing to fine-tune the enemy placement to allow for enemies in the back row. So thank you, and I will catch you later.